What if a king invited you to the most important celebration of your life, and you said no? Not just any celebration, but a royal wedding. A feast prepared with care, honor, and joy, and still, people refuse to come. This is the powerful story Jesus tells in Matthew chapter 22, verses 1 through 14, the parable of the wedding banquet. Jesus begins by saying, "The kingdom of heaven is like a king who prepared a wedding banquet for his son." Picture that moment. A king, a royal palace, a wedding celebration unlike anything anyone has ever seen. Tables filled with food, music echoing through the halls, servants moving with excitement. Everything is ready. The king sends his servants to call those who had already been invited. But then, something unexpected happens. They refuse to come. That's what Jesus says in Matthew chapter 22, verse 3. They had already received the invitation. They knew the day was coming. But when the time arrived, they chose not to show up. The king does not give up. He sends more servants. In Matthew chapter 22, verse 4, the message is clear. "Tell those who have been invited that I have prepared my dinner. My oxen and fattened cattle have been butchered, and everything is ready. Come to the wedding banquet." Everything is ready. The king is not asking for anything in return. He is offering a celebration, an invitation, a place at the table. But again, the response is shocking. Matthew chapter 22, verse 5 says, "But they paid no attention and went off, one to his field, another to his business." Think about that. They weren't all angry. They weren't all hostile. Some were just distracted, busy, focused on their own plans, their own priorities. The invitation from the king simply didn't matter enough. But others responded even worse. Matthew chapter 22, verse 6 says, "The rest seized his servants, mistreated them, and killed them." Now the story becomes serious. What began as a joyful invitation has turned into rejection and violence. The king's response is swift. Matthew chapter 22, verse 7 says, "The king was enraged. He sent his army and destroyed those murderers and burned their city." This moment reminds us that the king is not only generous, he is also just. Then the story takes an unexpected turn. The king says to his servants in Matthew chapter 22, verses 8 and 9, "The wedding banquet is ready, but those I invited did not deserve to come. So go to the street corners and invite to the banquet anyone you find." Anyone. Not just the expected guests. Not just the important people. Anyone. The servants go out into the streets. Matthew chapter 22, verse 10 says, "So the servants went out into the streets and gathered all the people they could find, the bad as well as the good, and the wedding hall was filled with guests." Now the banquet is full. People from everywhere, different backgrounds, different stories, all sitting at the king's table. All welcomed, all invited. But the story is not over yet, because there is one final moment that catches everyone off guard. The king enters the banquet hall to see the guests, and he notices something. One man is not wearing wedding clothes. In Matthew chapter 22, verse 12, the king asks, "Friend, how did you get in here without wedding clothes?" The man has no answer, no excuse, no explanation. Then the king gives a command. Matthew chapter 22, verse 13 says, "Tie him hand and foot, and throw him outside, into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." It's a sobering moment, because this man was invited. He was inside the banquet, but he was not prepared. And Jesus ends the parable with a powerful statement in Matthew chapter 22, verse 14. "For many are invited, but few are chosen." So what does this parable mean? The king represents God. The wedding banquet represents the kingdom of heaven. The original invited guests represent those who heard God's call but rejected it. Some ignored it. Some were too busy. Some responded with hostility. The servants represent the messengers God sends, prophets, teachers, and ultimately Jesus himself. Then the invitation expands. It goes out to everyone, to people from all walks of life, to those who may not have expected to be invited at all. This shows us something incredible. God's invitation is wide. It is open. It is generous. No one is excluded from being invited. But the parable also teaches something deeper. It's not enough to simply be invited. It's not even enough to show up. The man without wedding clothes represents someone who accepted the invitation outwardly but was not truly prepared inwardly. In those days, it was common for a host to provide proper garments for guests at a royal wedding. So the issue was not that the man couldn't find the right clothes. It was that he refused to wear what was provided. He chose his own way, instead of honoring the king. And that is the heart of the message. God invites everyone, but entering his kingdom requires more than just acceptance. It requires transformation, a change of heart, a willingness to receive what God provides. This parable challenges us to reflect. Have we responded to God's invitation? Or have we been too distracted, too busy, too focused on our own plans? Have we accepted the invitation but tried to live life on our own terms? Or have we allowed God to transform us from the inside out? The wedding banquet is a picture of joy, celebration, belonging. It is God saying, "Come, there is a place for you here." But it is also a reminder that this invitation matters. It is not something to ignore, not something to delay, not something to take lightly. Because one day, the door will close, and only those who are ready will remain. So the question becomes personal. If the king invited you today, would you come? Would you be ready? Would you honor the invitation? If this story opened your eyes and helped you understand one of Jesus' powerful teachings, there are many more parables waiting to be explored. You can continue this journey with The Parables of Jesus for Kids. This engaging and interactive book helps children and families discover the meaning behind Jesus' stories through fun, activities, simple explanations, and meaningful lessons that stay with you. It's perfect for family time, learning together, and growing in faith. You can find The Parables of Jesus for Kids through the link in the description. And if this message spoke to you, consider sharing it with someone who needs to hear it. Because the invitation is still going out, and there is still room at the table.